both of these players last year made it all the way to the last call. Both of them knocking on the door were denied, but now there is only one player in their way between them and that title, and Frozen already got Frost Lich Jaina in his opening hand. We see a 9-drop kept in the opening hand. That's how important that card is to his deck.
That's right. The name of the game for Frozen is to survive against the Jade Onslaught until he's able to stabilize either by controlling the board so commandingly or by using Skulking Geist and destroying the infinite combos or the infinite board presence that's made from the Druid.
We see Tom off to a strong start with Jade Idol into Wild Growth with Nourish and Aya still in his hand. Ooh, that is not what Frozen wants to see. One of the few cheap spells in his deck ends up running into a branching path from Tom, so no draw off the Raven Familiar.
Tom does have this branching paths, and unlike those other control matchups, it's not necessarily as imperative to get your life count up versus killing the mage. If you look at how a lot of the control mages that aren't burn focused, they care so much about how tall and wide the board is. Jade Druid's very good at both.
Frozen does pick up a Dragon's Fury off of this second Raven Familiar. Not nearly as powerful as against perhaps the aggressive Druid decks, but still a strong card to sweep off the Jades if they do get out of control.
Now, many times we look at Nourish and we think it is a card that we want to ramp with, but then Tom doesn't have any more draw. So this is a position, Gilbert. What do you think Tom needs to do?
It's definitely a tough spot for Tom here because this is a matchup that is very much about pressure and attrition. Tom needs to keep enough pressure on Frozen so he can't just sit back and ultimately get to Skulking Geist and Jaina and really shut everything down, turn things around on him. So without the ultimate infestation already in his hand, if he does Nourish for mana to ramp up, he does run the risk of just running out of breath. But it will be card draw for Tom, who would have drawn ultimate infestation immediately. So I'm sure he's a little sad about that choice at this point, but it would be a big risk if he were to simply ramp his mana.
Yeah, of course, had he known, completely different scenario. He would have been able to ramp. But we'll see if the mana crystals end up being a limiting factor here for Tom 60229 as this Jade train continues with Aya Blackball.
Frozen with the Medivh's Valet off of Ice Barrier, able to take down Aya, but that does leave a Jade behind. And Tom, with a bit of a mana advantage still, thanks to the Wild Growth, is able to keep the pressure on here.
Yeah, and I wonder if that card draw Frozen ends up being one of those factors that allows Tom to build even more Jades before Frozen can get to that Skulking Geist. You look at Frozen's AoE, and it's fantastic. Dragon's Fury and Meteor, Flame Strike, all very powerful tools. But eventually, the Jades will get out of range. And, you know, one of the things about it, too, was the fact that Frozen plays cards like Ice Barrier, right? It increases the chances compared to the normal control lists that have bigger spells.
Yeah, well, Dragon's Fury here hits a 4, so he does not kill the Jade Behemoth. This is a big part of why Tom chose to take that attack with his 3/3 Jades. It allows a small hit off of the Dragon's Fury he knew was in Frozen's hand to not clear his board guaranteed.
And at the same time, Frozen knows that there's a chance that he hits a second Ice block or you know, it's Arcane Intellects with the Dragon's Fury. So he's willing to take that hit even if it didn't work out as well.
Now Tom does have a Wild Growth. He can ramp mana up to get to Ultimate Infestation much sooner. Though he does have a hand that is... Oh, he's actually...
Look at this.
I was going to say he has a hand that is a little bit too full from the Infestation, but Tom recognizes that. He wants to cast Infestation next turn and not run the risk of potentially burning cards. So he just damages his own minion with the Spellstone, which does leave it vulnerable to the Firelink Portal from Frozen, but this will be Infestation time as Tom deals 5, draws 5, gains 5 armor, creates 5 Reddit threads.
Yeah, and it'll be key for him to not burn some of those really valuable cards. Arcane Tyrant! The last draw here. Frozen, of course, small little acknowledgement that he wished that Tom burned a card. It would have made his life a little bit easier.
And the positioning from Tom here with his smallest minion in the middle does make the Meteor in Frozen's hand much less impactful, but what is impactful is Frost Lich Jaina, which is going to start to allow Frozen to ping down damaged minions from Tom's side of the board and allow him to convert these removal spells into threats as well. From Tom's side now, he needs to try to make minions that are frankly out of range of most of the damage-based removal in Frozen's deck. He is, of course, afraid of polymorphs that can take down anything individually large. So, thankfully for him, Jades do tend to go both tall and wide very well.
Yeah, it's difficult because at 3 health and above, there's so many ways for Mage to manipulate things with Blizzard, the 3 damage adjacent from the Meteors, and then Flame Strike's at 4, so there's so many breakpoints. And of course, like you said, you know, the polymorph, just to make a little 1/1 sheep. That can also get tricky. Tom's just going to try and extend to the board while reducing low health minion count. We'll see if Frozen will opt to go for an immediate Water Elemental or perhaps play a little bit slower.
Meteor on the 5/5 does give him a ping to create a Water Elemental on the Arcane Tyrant, so able to convert some removal on multiple minions and give himself a Water Elemental. Malfurion is a big draw for Tom, though, because that allows him to generate significant threat out of his hero power, as he can do meaningful damage rather than just one a turn. The Spellstone in his hand is also interesting because if he plays Malfurion, then hero powers for armor, he can use... Actually, the Spellstone's already upgraded once, so he actually wouldn't even have the hero power. If he plays Malfurion, he can play the Spellstone straight up for 6 damage to kill the Water Elemental and get that threat off the board. There is some risk of creating small minions that can potentially be whittled down by Frozen, but he does have the opportunity to potentially create the spiders, which can mitigate future possible Water Elementals preemptively from Frozen if he doesn't AoE them away.
And look how deep Tom is into his deck. That's so crucial for Tom to be able to get so far ahead of the Mage draws that even if the Skulking Geist comes, maybe the Jays are too big for the Mage to even overcome.
Yeah, and they are spiders for Tom here, recognizing that the 1/5s are not relevant and that having a preemptive solution to those Water Elementals is very valuable. Plague Lord punch to the face does put Frozen in a bit of a precarious situation from a life total perspective.
Yes, and one thing too for Frozen is to consider the threat of multiple angles. You know, we talk about branching paths and how it can be used reverse. That's 8 damage that's staring at him if he lets it go. So he's going to utilize Blizzard, even though the board is not terribly imposing by itself. He's not at the most comfortable life total.
Vandal plus Endurance.
Yes, and this allows Tom to draw the Jade Idol potentially and then shuffle it in.
And there's that Jade Idol. Frozen still does not have Skulking Geist, so the threat of these recurrent Jades is a very big deal. Already at 6/6.
Yeah, but he needs to kill off this Blood Mage Thanos. Deny the easy ping here for Frozen. We know that Frozen has multiple ways to get that as well. Also could just collide to the 5/3, but now Frozen has multiple removal options yet again.
Nothing super clean to deal with most of the board. The Fandral is actually a pretty big problem for Frozen because it does mean that those Jade Idols can just continually create both threats and the future possibility of additional Jades.
It doesn't allow him to skip the turn. Usually when you have the Jade Idol Infinites, and assuming you're going toe-to-toe with resources, Druid 1 turn has to skip on their final Jade Idol to shuffle it into their deck. But I don't even know if the game will progress to that point, Kimber, because Frozen will try to get to the Skulking Geist, or Tom's going to blow him out of the water.
Frozen's Arcanologist will find his second copy of Ice Swap. This potentially allows Dragon's Fury better chance of hitting high. He does have both of his Arcane Intellects remaining in his deck, so there could be a low damage Fury if he goes for it. So Polymorph and Pink does generate another Water Element that deals a 6/6. Vandal's left up, so a Wrath and the Plague Lord ability from Tom both have both abilities. Branching Paths, looks like he's going to dig, I believe.
Yeah, just wants to draw.
Trying to find more Jade Idols, just keep the massive minion train rolling. And there's 2 of them, so gigantic, larger and larger man after larger and larger man.
Frozen's also crucially drawn a lot of his cheaper spells. So Dragon's Fury can hit the 7 on the Flame Strike, but that's his final spell. In fact, most of Frozen's deck is just minions. So after Tom is done setting up his pressure here.
That's another Jade if he wants it. The 9 health Jade does get out of range of even Dragon's Fury plus ping if he hits the highest cost spell in his deck.
Oh! I see Skulking Geist.
That is Skulking Geist. That is something Frozen crucially needs, but is it in time? Tom has already created so many large Jades that Frozen now needs to ensure he can deal with what's already on the board. He has Ice Block, so he can buy time. That was the last possible turn I think Frozen could have drawn Skulking Geist to still have a chance in this game.
Well, here's another thing too. You know, Frozen is staring at 24 damage just on the board, let alone the hero power and any kind of burst coming out here. So he's going to try to see if he can stall over the course of multiple turns.
Yeah, this does mean that Tom has, I believe, just a Jade Blossom left in his deck. So he is working with everything that he will have for the rest of the game.
Tom's has 22 damage, can't even pop the Ice Block this turn. That is so crucial. And the second branching pass being used confirmed that for Frozen, that Tom wouldn't have the damage.
Frozen has no water elementals. This is the life total he has to work with. The Iron Golem is actually pretty big here because it does mean that Frozen can't preemptively damage any of these minions with his minions on board to then get Dragon's Fury off to damage them.
And there's 2 Arcane Intellects, a Polymorph, and a single copy of Flame Strike. It is 1 in 4 to hit the ideal Dragon's Fury.
Arcane Intellect, only 3 damage. That is not enough to clear off almost any of these minions. It does set the Iron Golem into range and allow the Medivh's Valet to kill off several of these, but there's still 2 big minions left.
The sequencing from Frozen was also to account for the low outcome of Arcane Intellect and Polymorph, so that's why he traded as a little small minion first. So even Frozen accounting for the bad possibilities. Now Tom, you know, Ultimate Devastation is always kind of a liability here, so that card seems kind of weak. And then this double Ogun Summons is purely just life gain at this point. That Jade Blossom is his last minion, or minion of substance, remaining.
So if Frozen can deal with these minions and, importantly, sustain himself against the Malfurion hero power. Because even if he can kill all of Tom's minions, if he doesn't make Water Elemental, it's possible for Tom to just punch him in the face and break his Ice Block and then kill him the following turn. So here, Tom's looking to mitigate this Water Elemental, which opens up the possibility of him continuing to punch face, and that's exactly what he'll do. He will punch the face with Spider Fangs and break Frozen's Ice Block with still a gigantic minion left up.
Yes, and also making it more complicated for Frozen to get the 1 damage Icy Touch and converting it to Water Elemental. Frozen picking up Polymorph here would be pretty huge.
Flame Strike is too small to kill any of these Jades. He has to Ice Block, because there is still the ultimate infestation remaining in Tom's hand. Frozen knows Tom has drawn his entire deck, so the threat of the 5 direct damage, even if it will send Tom deep into fatigue, would kill Frozen if he doesn't put up the Ice Block this turn.
What will you do, Frozen? After you Ice Block, how are you going to ensure safety?
Melts away.
Without being able to, he has to also set up to deal with the follow-up board too. Even if it's just a single Scarab that survives off Spreading Blade, he'll die because he's at 1 life.
He does have Dirty Rat, which can get in the way of smaller minions, but yeah, Meteor plus Ice Block. He knows that no reason to bother to attack this minion. Tom is fatigued, but he can break the Ice Block. As you said, Spreading Plague. Just that Scarab alone threatens lethal damage.
Frozen waiting for his next draw in anticipation. Oh my goodness, he picked up an Arcane Artificer!
This sets him, this is the perfect draw.
Wow!
This from Frozen sets him to 8 life, out of range of Infestation, and he pings down the Scarab to create a water elemental. I think all of a sudden, Tom is he locked out of this game?
He has to kill the Arcane Artificer, but then he's not dealing the damage necessary for the ultimate Infestation. The Water Elemental is going to be able to gain damage. Perhaps that fist pump was more than just happiness to see the draw, but it could be the happiness that he has sealed this game.
Tom had Frozen at 1 life, both ice blocks broken, Malfurion hero power at the ready, but Arcane Artificer brings Frozen back into the game, and I think it is Tom who is without a way out of this.
He's thinking about maybe Frozen just has only minions. If he...
Oh, he concedes! Frozen with the enormous comeback.
Be very volatile depending on how the priest draws. And then he has the Jade Druid Mirror, so that was a big win for Frozen.
Speaking of volatile, here we are in the Tempo Rogue versus Highlander Priest matchup. We have seen some powerful starts featuring Keleseth's Shadow Step throughout the weekend, as well as some clearly very powerful Highlander Priest games. But Frozen is playing a bit different version of Highlander Priest, as we see from Netherspite Historian in his hand. His version has some dragons.
Draws the chain in the opening hand, the most important card off the mulligan. So you have early gameplay, Shadow Rebrandu in the second most.
The Cleric is very good here too. Against Tempo Rogue, it can give you a tool that can help deny your opponent's early game aggression.
Wow.
And give you the ability to potentially draw some extra cards. And Frozen to play on turn 1.
Get that mulligan from Tom. Keeps Cobalt Scalebane and Vile Spine Slayer, 2 cards that are very powerful for mid-game tempo, but almost concedes the fact that he has a very low chance of getting any kind of board dominance early on.
And we see here, speaking of board dominance early on, the Northshire Cleric is really preventing Tom from being able to safely play the Swashbuckler. He'd love to play Swashbuckler, get patches out of his deck and go on the offense, but if he does, that Cleric will just start feeding Frozen cards as he heals them.
That's right, patches is a liability.
No dragon drawn for Frozen, so the Historian is waiting for some new history to be made.
That's right. Tom, of course, waiting for some way to snipe that Northshire Cleric very easily. But at the same time, we've seen Temple Rogues take it very slow against the Highlander Priest, primarily because if they're so happy to take the board early and they overextend and Priest clears it once or twice, then Rogue has no more cards. And that's where cards like Evil Minstrel really come into play.
Actually, I had a chance to talk to Frozen before the match, and he mentioned that Tom's version of Tempo Rogue he felt would be easier for him to beat because there is only a single copy of that Elven Minstrel.
Wow.
And here Frozen, with a kind of an amusing play, smiting his own Cleric.
Right.
He decides, okay, well, this smite is less important than the possibility to find the more powerful cards in my deck.
Yes.
Decides to just cash it in for a card here.
Yeah, it's essentially just 1 mana draw a card. Frozen. He's okay with that because Holy Smite doesn't seem like it'll do much right now.
Tom has gone a bit wider here.
He's setting. It looks like he's setting up for a very powerful Cobalt Scalebane to have multiple targets. Not only is it a dragon and a lot of stats, but it'll set a minion's attack to 4, assuming all these 1/1 survive.
This also means that even if Frozen attacks into one of these minions and heals up his Cleric, he will still have 3 points of power attacking the board between the 2 pirates and the weapon that he has set up.
It's true. He does have the flexibility of even playing Serenite Chain Gang. But look at what Frozen's been able to pick up. It's a Potion of Madness.
The Power Word Shield gets the Cleric out of range, and Potion of Madness can allow him to clear off both of these minions, which makes even a South Sea Captain draw for Tom not allow him to present any meaningful threat.
And now he's able to hold on to Circle of Healing in case he needs to use that for later. And again, emphasizing how important it is to be 1 card deeper into your deck. Because now, losing the Holy Smite doesn't seem that bad of an idea whatsoever.
Not at all. And Tom here, we see a bit kind of exasperation perhaps crossed over his face. He has the ability to coin out either the Vile Spine or the Cobalt Scalebane that he did keep. The Scalebane is very powerful against Frozen's deck. There's only really the Shadow Word Death that can take it down easily. But Tom decides that he wants to ensure no more card draw for Frozen, Perhaps a good decision since we see the Circle plus Wild Pyromancer waiting for Frozen's hand, but it's Raza time.
Wow, the tempo of Vilespine, or sorry, the Vilespine's tempo is not very good, but he has double Shadow Step, which makes Vilespine's ability to get crazy value very strong against Priest. But here's the thing, Tom's not really shoving that much damage. A lot of time when you're playing Vilespine in this position, you want to hit with a second minion, so you can pressure your opponent and continue to stack advantage on the board. That's a great move, but Tom doesn't have much to follow up.
Tom could have played Cobalt Scalebane that turn and attacked the face, which would have buffed his Vilespine up such that there was no trade option available to Frozen. That could potentially run into a silence, but it could be a problem. But Frozen here with Kazakis, Icar of Undeath as a 1 here has to be kind of attractive since he does have Raza as well as Cleric in his pool, though the fact that he did Potion of Madness to Patches does add another small minion that could potentially be resurrected and not work out for him quite as well.
It is worth noting that that is why you want to take Patches if you are a Priest with Potion of Madness, because if you do resurrect it, at least it's a 1 damage charge as opposed to a 1 damage do nothing. Or one mana minion that does nothing.
All right, well, Tom picks up a Bone Mare, but only 6th mana this turn. He does have some potential trades on either of these minions, and a number of options of how to spend the rest of his mana.
I gotta imagine the Pyromancer is very threatening.
How long can this go on? How long can this go on?
Yeah, I love these preemptive attacks.
Yeah, this is something we see a number of the players do over the course of Worlds this weekend. Gives them the ability to ensure that even if Frozen heals it, it'll be down, if it attacks into something, it'll be down to 1 life. Ooh, Kazakis Potion time. With a Auctioneer gonna draw quite a bit from Frozen.
Oh my goodness!
Oh dear, he finds the Cleric. Draws 2 cards off the Circle, 1 card off the Auctioneer. Frozen is drawing yet another here with the Raza Hero Power. He's just drawing his deck.
That is the key for Frozen to unlock his deck's potential, his card draw. And there was actually multiple options there, but given how the circumstances played out, and because Frozen's able to keep that Circle of Healing by drawing with that Holy Smite, he now has opened up a world of possibilities.
Frozen has 9 cards in his hand. Still has not found Shadow Reaper Anduin, but he has a wealth of options available to him. And frankly, Tom needs to deal with his board.
So many options.
The Auctioneer from Frozen here has to die. There's no way Tom can possibly allow that to live and hope to win the game.
And the Auctioneer tech is paying off dividends. A lot of people choose Lyra the Sun Shard, but Frozen even set up that path too. Remember, Kazakis often choose the 5 mana potion so you can draw 2 and a lot of value. But he took the 1 mana potion knowing that he has Gadget's Hand Auctioneer in the hand. He's going to go for a big stack.
This is the swing turn that Tom is looking for here. Yes. Develops a pretty big board, debating if he wants to add a quarter of 3 for 2 for 3. I think he's afraid of Anduin, afraid of Dragonfire Potion.
I would be. My opponent just drew 5 cards last turn.
Nether's been a story and could find a Duskbreaker here. These are all pretty attractive too.
Yeah, the Malygos is certainly interesting, but I think it's a little bit too much mana. And then a Dragonlord Operative is the most tempo and value.
And the Bookworm here, allowing him to take down the Vilespine, gives him the most immediate impact on the board.
That's true. You know, trying to limit your opponent's Bone Mirror opportunity is also pretty valuable.
There does come down. Frozen can clear the buff Chain Gang with his board if he chooses. He also has Silence, which will allow him to keep the Kazakis around. Just a lot of options.
Frozen has draw opportunities here, either through his Novice or his Acolyte.
Looks like he's thinking about Acolyte plus Spirit Lash.
I wonder.
Spirit Lash allows him to clear the minion with his Kazakis, but then I'm wondering what he's going to do with his other remaining 4 mana. Possibly play the Twilight Drake at that moment.
It's the sort of hand where you just have so many possibilities that it's a lot to calculate. Frozen been doing a lot of calculating all weekend.
He's seen that Tom's holding on to one card from the very beginning of the game for a long time. So I wonder what he's also reading. We've established that Frozen is a big hand reader.
SI agent, so that can continue to help with his tempo plan.
I hope you like my invention.
Rope is burning though. Frozen needs to figure out exactly how he's going to navigate the rest of this turn. And it will just be adding spin to the board and taking down the Buff Chain Gang.
Twilight Drake is the only dragon remaining, but Frozen has a 4-12 on the board, and the Vile Spine already got double Shadow Step, so I think in Frozen's mind, it's like, well, does he have another Vile Spine in his hand? Unlikely.
That he does, though.
Yeah, he's going to get some bad news. This is a big swing turn here from Tom.
Yeah, it will absolutely pick apart Frozen's board.
Right.
But thanks to all that card draw, Frozen does have that Dragonfire Potion he just drew, so he will be able to clear this off quite easily.
Now, very big difference of whether or not this Dragonfire Potion lands. Frozen gonna hesitate. Don't immediately snap call if you don't have to. Think if you can even conserve your resources.
He does have even just Velen Spirit Lash if he wanted to go for that, but that wouldn't clear up everything, and it is just such a clean clear with the Dragonfire Potion. Frozen can even go on offense with the SI agent. And crucially, the more damage he can get onto Tom, and the more he can reduce his life total before he even gets to the stage of the game where he plays Anduin, the less hero powers he has to do to burn him down.
Yeah, Tom is playing very conservative with his resources, trying to extend the length of this game. And now he's starting to sense that Frozen doesn't have the Anduin because he would have had multiple chances to do.
Only 8 cards left in the deck, and there's the Shadow Reaper. Right on time to take care of Bone Mare. The crowd loves it. And Tom does not. He concedes. Frozen.
Druid was the public enemy #1. And Tom could play a hero to all the time travelers out there if he can take it down 3 times, but he's going to turn to his Highlander Priest for answers.
I think Frozen might be the hero if he just beats this Highlander Priest here, though. But Cleric is available for Tom on turn 1, which we have seen played very often in this matchup to prevent the Jades from coming down without the risk of card draw from the Priest. Frozen does not have, I was going to say he didn't have ramp, but he just drew a Jade Blossom. And Tom with the Glock Crawler, he's going offense. He needs to get damage in rather than just wait for the combo and burst damage because there is a lot of armor gain available to Frozen.
Yep, that Northshire Cleric is a problem for Frozen because playing Jade Blossom means that Tom has a guaranteed weighted card draw. He can bump into it and heal. But Frozen kept the Nourish. That's something that I remember he was one of the first players to talk about that. He's like, you always keep Nourish in any kind of slow Druid deck. Back when Malygos Druid was popular in the Winter Championships where he qualified for the Worlds.
See Tom 3-0 with this Highlander Priest deck so far this weekend. He's gonna have to make it 4-0 if he wants to keep his dream of a World Championship alive. This is not the first time Tom has been down 0-2 in this tournament before, though. He swept against Doc Pone after he was at a deficit. He came back and had that reverse sweep. Can he do it again?
Yeah, the difference between back then and now is that the stakes have never been higher. Frozen coins out Aya Blackpaw, has a lot of Jade Trains going, leading into Malfurion the Pestilent. Tom picks up Shadow Reaper Anduin, so the Death Knights have been located. And Tom is drawing more and more with this Northshire Cleric. He's going to even silence and remove the Aya. This is starting to get out of control in the card draw for the Priest.
Frozen does have the option to drop a Behemoth or Nourish this turn. I think he is likely thinking of Nourishing to avoid that card draw coming through, but no. He just needs to get on this board here and defend himself. That damage, even just from the small minions, does add up. Circle of Healing does offer quite a bit of potential card draw for Tom if he wants to cash it in. But those Jades are starting to get bigger here. So he's going to have to figure out how to deal with Frozen's offense as well. Hit Circle draws 2 cards for Tom. Shadow Vision is going to give him some more options. Shadow Pain is a great way to deal with that Behemoth.
Blessed be this funnel cake.
And the march of the tiny minions continues.
Yeah, and this little chip damage is starting to be relevant in my opinion. Like 22 is significant just from a Northside Cleric and a Glock Crawler. And still, Frozen doesn't have a way to stop the card draw. This Northside Cleric is single-handedly drawing half of Tom's deck.
Frozen debating Malfurion. One of the more important cards of the matchup just in terms of getting that armor total up. I have said many times throughout the weekend that I always feel so smart, and I feel like players are so smart whenever they make spiders here. And I think spiders may be what Frozen is looking for, since he certainly does not want to just make minions that Tom can attack into. There they are, the poisonous spiders.
No Potion of Madness.
But there is a Shadow Vision if Tom wants to dig for one.
Count 6 spells in the Priest arsenal.
That cuts one down. Shadow Visions finds Potion.
Wow!
Those spiders are done for.
And Tom with the proper draw. We don't know if that horse might end up being the difference maker there, but it certainly improved his probability. Tom is firing on all cannons, not rattled whatsoever, being down 0-2.
Frozen's Jades are getting bigger though. Jade lost 4-4. Swipe takes down the Cleric.
Final
Hard draw may be dealt with, but it has done a lot of damage so far. Already available, the Shadow Reaper Anduin.
Shadow Reaper Anduin, and Drew starts out at 21 life.
Tom, holding on to the Anduin, does recognize the next Jades that Frozen will be making will be 5-5, so wants to get the removal effect of it in addition to turning into the new hero power. He's just going to keep the march of the minions going, connecting with the Priest of the Feast. Frozen with no armor. And as of now, no Ultimate Infestation. But he does have Vandrel, Jade Idol, and Nourish. He wants to get that Jade train to continue rolling.
Dirt that he's been holding for so long will finally be able to be of use. And right now, Tom's tempo early on is starting to pay off huge dividends.
Near the draw for Tom. Anduin still available, would kill one Jade, but will Tom wait? Try to get more.
Yeah, he has some powerful removal in the form of Anduin and Psychic Scream. Those are his premium cards to deal with a big fat Jade board. Auctioneer to draw more cards to find Raza has to at least be somewhat appetizing here, but his follow-up is not exactly great because he only has Mind Blast as a cheap spell. Oh, wow. Psychic Scream. I wasn't anticipating him to use it this early here, Kibler.
I think part of the thought process behind the Psychic Scream is getting some cards that are not those Jade Idols into Tom's deck and putting him in an awkward position. All right, well, could be Anduin time now. No, Jade Behemoth and Ackland Pink come down.
Yeah, he wants more off that Shadow Reaper Anduin because in Frozen's hand, he could potentially have multiple Jades because his Jade Idols got shuffled and he just drew with Nourish.
Well, with the Psychic Scream gone, Frozen has a lot of ways to just go wide in this board. Talking about the Violet Teacher build of the deck, which he just picked up.
Yes.
That can create significant threats thanks to branching paths, which you see 2 copies of already in Frozen's hand.
And also, Shadow Visions has been used. So sometimes you think about the second possibility of a Psychic Scream that's discovered with Shadow Visions, but Frozen has seen that possibility and can eliminate that.
Frozen trying to figure out how best to create threats, protect himself, and get the pressure on Tom.
So the Violet Teacher and the Spellstone was originally what I was looking at. I think the Spellstones are only upgraded one time. Actually, one of them also got upgraded, so he does have it available for him. This is interesting though. He's choosing to play even slower. Doesn't want to extend too much onto the board. And that could be one of the reasons why Tom just picked up Dragonfire Potion.
There's Raza. Tom has all the pieces now. Raza, Anduin, even Radiant Lyra. So many tools.
Yeah, we mentioned that Frozen has Gadget Sam, but no Lyra. Tom's choosing both, and it could be a huge reason how he's going to win this game here.
It is Anduin time. Takes down the one big Jade and starts the hero powers at Frozen's face.
Could be he probably was counting his damage. He has Raza for the following turn, and I mean, we've seen even the games end just solely off of that.
Frozen now trying to figure out, much more crucially, how to defend himself. Gonna go ahead and spreading Plague.
Now Frozen thinks that for the rest of this game, he's going to be ahead on board, so the most he's going to be able to ever get from the Spreading Plague is just a single Scarab anyways.
Kazakis, another big powerful card for Tom.
Yes. Tom has in the teens worth of damage right now. But we'll see if he's able to generate even more. He's going to look for that very crucial.
Goes for 10 mana potion. He wants big power here.
It was so fast, I didn't even see what he picked.
I didn't even see what the options were. Deal 6 to all summon an 8/8. Okay, so Tom is looking to wipe the board that Frozen generates and push with another big minion.
Frozen's Jades are at 7/7, so that could clear all the Jades up to 8/8.
Frozen actually has 20 points of burst damage right now. Each of those branching paths represents +6. It looks like he's going for armor. But this is the power of being able to go wide with Frozen's deck. He is able to threaten these counter lethals. But he recognizes now, okay, I'm the one who's under pressure, and Branching Paths is going to have to be used for its primary focus in this matchup, which is armoring up.
Yeah. Does make you wonder, though, what if Frozen had the ability to stand onto the board and even pressure with more Violet Teacher tokens? I think a little bit optimistic, given that Tom had removal, but that's the kind of delicate balance you have to weigh. Do I go aggressive, or am I just going to play very defensive? And all of a sudden, Frozen was kind of a critical danger zone. Now he's at 47.
Yeah, and we've talked about how powerful the armor gain can be in this matchup. Specifically, getting above 20, even 30 armor, as we've seen Frozen getting now. The chances of the Druid winning when a Priest gets that much armor is very, very low, but Frozen has no ultimate infestation. He has all those cards that were shuffled into his deck by the Psychic Scream that are keeping him from drawing Ultimate Infestation. If he doesn't find one, despite all this armor gain, he may just run out of resources.
This might be just an exhaustion game plan here from Tom. Forget trying to just kill your opponent. He has no cards. And Frozen's shaking his head because he knows the Dragonfire Potion clears everything. And Tom, if he can even stick the Lyra on board, that's game ending itself. Frozen needs a big draw, but remember that Psychic Scream also complicates his draw process.
Pay
Another
attention,
Teacher.
class.
Without any other spells, though, Teacher does not do much. And it is Lyra Radiant time.
Yeah. Tom immediately going, recognizing that he doesn't have to think very much about the early stages. He needs as much time to adapt to any cards that he draws off of this.
Some players not recognize quite how fast they have to go, but Tom, all cylinders firing. Devour Mind, even more resources. Frozen with no cards. Tom just generating more and more.
Frozen needs an Ultimate Infestation or a Nourish.
Curious Glimmer Roots. That could have been an ultimate infestation if that had not been shuffled into his deck. And Frozen sees the writing on the wall.
The Jade Druid mirror that Frozen had against Scintillol. He was heavily unfavored against such a greedy version of Druid, but because the Violet Teacher generated just enough tokens, that helped him get enough board presence for a win.
Tom with the Edwin Van Cleef in his opening hand. That is a very powerful tool against Druid. Can very quickly make a giant minion.
This is a great cue by Tom as well, recognizing that.
Oh, an Innervate. That can help make a huge Van Cleef.
Not this turn, but the next turn. We could be in for some fireworks. And Frozen doesn't have removal, he's got ramp. Nothing to backstab though. Unless he wants to backstab his
Southsea.
Is it worth doing that at that point? Because you're all in on one card.
Tom could also take it a little bit slower. He could try and get the hero power this turn, fire off the Edwin the next. Maybe there's a Jade Blossom.
He saw 2 cards being kept. He saw the Jade Idol be played, and then his opponent didn't play Wild Growth. And then he also knows that Frozen likes to keep Nourish, but that might be too slow.
Go time. He's going for the biggest Van Cleef he can make. We saw that backstab moused over. When Frozen sees this, he knows what's coming.
Yeah. That is a 10-10 Van Cleef. And Frozen does not have a way to deal with it right now.
We have seen Frozen face down huge Van Cleefs early before. In fact, I believe he beat a 10-10 Van Cleef on turn 2 in the Winter Championship to qualify him here.
He has 2 turns left to survive. Violet Teacher is interesting. He can play Mark of the Lotus and Violet Teacher that will summon a decent amount of stats.
It does.
And he can swipe it down.
And this is the power of the Violet Teacher, giving him this board that threatens the Van Cleef, that threatens Tom.
Swashbuckler picks up Eye of Black Paw, but the damage that dealt, Van Cleef did 20.
And Leroy is in the hand. Unless Frozen gains armor and kills the entire board, he is dead next turn. He can swipe, trade his board, and hero power, but he has to hero power this turn, or else Leroy plus the dagger will be lethal damage.
Oh no!
Wild Growth seals it. Frozen is going to take lethal damage from Leroy next turn, and we are going to a game number 5.
Just as fast as it began, it has ended. Frozen can't believe it. Tom has equalized, and we are going to one last final game to determine.
Frozen is playing
Oh
the
gosh.
Violet Teacher build.
Neither player wants to look at this. Oh,
Wow.
oh, interesting.
That is not something I expected to see. Tom keeps Ultimate Infestation. He finds Wild Growth. He finds Jade Blossom.
Will that pay off? I mean, Frozen had 2 Ultimate Infestations, but he opted to go for the early game ramp opportunities.
Well, Tom has that ramp. Wild Growth gets the engines churning. Frozen finds Innervate.
Yes.
He can coin out the Jade Blossom, and then next turn he can Innervate out Nourish. Frozen's build includes 1 copy of Innervate.
Yes. And that early game tempo does matter, as being able to get your Jade count ahead of your opponent often will tilt the battles in your favor. The early game minions, it used to be Jade Spirits from the past, but now the Jade Behemoths won't matter as much.
Attention, class.
Violet Teacher comes down, and Tom does not have an easy way to deal with this.
He does not have any armor gain to let that Ironwood Golem attack. Unless he decides to fire off Branching Paths, he does not. It is Jade Blossom. Wow. Tom already up to 7 mana next turn with the Infestation in hand.
A crucial moment in this game here, since Frozen has 2 forms of card draw, but 2 forms of alternative uses as well. Gaining mana crystals can help him jump ahead of Tom's ramp.
One of the really powerful things about Branching Paths is it does allow you to more aggressively use Nourish for crystals. So Frozen can use his Nourish and still have the Branching Paths to fall back on if he can't immediately find an Ultimate Infestation.
I am ready to
And he goes for it. He's ramping up. We are going to be finding some heavy hitters very soon in this game.
He knows that Tom still doesn't have the armor gain. He would have to generate it through Malfurion, and even then still doesn't have a way to answer the Violet Teacher.
Vandal plus Wrath here allows him to answer Violet Teacher,
Yes.
which is his Jade Gold.
Now Tom is firmly ahead of the board.
Frozen has that Innervate. If he does find an ultimate infestation next turn, he will be able to cast it. But this turn, it looks like it's time to be a Death Knight. Malfurion the Pestilent. Is it spider time? It's always spider time.
It's always spider time, and you know, now we're starting to reach the climax of what these early game decisions will lead to. Frozen chose to throw away the ultimate infestations, and now is looking a little weak on the card draw outside the branching paths. And then Tom is going to have plenty of resources.
Double draws here, finds Jade Idol and a Wild Growth.
Wow.
That'll get him to 10 for next turn. Jade Idol plus Spellstone lets him empty his hand, take down one of these spiders. Next turn he will have Infestation plus Arcane Tyrant. Frozen does not find ultimate infestation of his own.
Pay attention, class.
Violet Teacher Branching Paths does let him go quite wide here.
I am ready
Even
to
has
learn.
potential to Mark of the Lotus as well. And this ability to go wide is much stronger against the threat of an individual ultimate infestation. But he still doesn't quite have the tools to take down both Fandral and the Golem.
Yep. Decides to even hold on to his Innervate. This Fandral is now going to stay onto the board, which allows Tom to kill that Violet Teacher.
Ultimate Infestation, like so many times before, draws Tom a huge hand. Another Infestation. Tom is just firing on all cylinders here.
I guess the solace is that Frozen is still kind of keeping up in the Jade count right now. But still looking kind of dicey here.
He is not keeping up in card.
He does have the board tempo though. That is a lot of Jades, and Frozen's almost out of cards.
Frozen needs a big draw right now. He's shaking his head. He did not find it. Branching Paths lets him dig once again.
Oh, an Eye of Blackpaw just gets drawn.
Golems are a girl's best friend.
That's pretty big for Frozen.
It is, but his Jades are still smaller than Tom's. He is still behind. Tom has the opportunity to take lots of advantageous trades here. And with the Arcane Tyrant in his hand, Infestation number 2.
Yeah. The builds of the decks are really starting to show. Frozen doesn't have these Arcane Tyrants for the swings. And Tom, with the early gambit of Ultimate Infestation, is paying off in spades.
Another shake of the head. Spreading Plague is not it. We'll buy him some time. Tom with a fistful of cards will not give him too much longer.
Frozen choosing not to remove a minion, instead play Oaken Summons on no minion just for the armor gain.
Tom has a pair of swipes here. He can pick apart these scarabs and start pushing for damage. He can also just build more Jades. He has a Behemoth. He has a Jade Idol. Behemoth makes more Jades. Jade. Swipe to the face, lets all these 4-attack minions take down the Scarab. Tom has an army. Frozen finds wild growth.
Card draws too late. Where are his ultimate infestations? He chose not to keep them. And now Tom has all the time in the world to establish his board presence. Things are looking dire for our USA player.
Tom finds an Aya of his own. He has so much pressure.
Even with such a sharp advantage, Tom is still looking to make 0 mistakes here.
Frozen shakes his head. Tom marching his Jade Golems to victory.
This might be too much, Gibbler. This is so much damage. 15, 25, 30, 31, 34, plus burst into hand. Ultimate infestation is finally drawn.
If it gets too late, Frozen picks up a hand of cards, but Tom has a board full of giant minions.
He has 28 on board. The branching pass allows him to get an additional 10, that's 38. Swipe is 42. 43, he'd still be short, even if he could go all phase with everything.
But even if he can't kill him this turn, this board is almost inevitable. Frozen, look at his hand, he has swipes. He can pick apart a few minions, but not all of these giant monsters.
This is looking like it's gonna be over soon.
Frozen takes off the headset. Tom's victory is his. Tom 60229 is the 2017 Hearthstone World